don't think we, in my opinion, we are not being betrayed. We have done some things, we don't take them. This didn't happen overnight. We're not gonna solve the problem overnight. But it's a little pieces at a time. We just taking our first step today to where we need to go.
Since it's a public park, is there gonna be any celebration of African American history here?
Well, I'm sure, I can't say that, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be down the road, but that's something we just can't, right now, we just can't, say it right now.
As a follow-up to that, the NAACP press, okay.
Mind if I just
Sure,
follow up?
sure.
Sure.
I think there are a couple of respects we can get at some Black history issues. One is in telling the whole story at the park, you have to tell the story that this place means heritage to some people, and to other people it means hate. And you have to explain who those people are, what it means to them, in kind of museum exhibit that school children hopefully will want to come to at some point. And the second thing is resolution number 4 had to do with Washington W. King Bridge, which is honoring the life of an African-American bridge builder who was prominent in the Southeast and lived in Athens, just so happened to build one of the bridges we have here at the park. So that's going to be a national historic site. And people are going to, black, white, brown, all kinds of people are going to be able to come to that historic site and know something about an African-American bridge builder. So because this is the world's biggest Confederate memorial, you're not going to be able to tell a story that's going to please both sides. But you can tell the truth, and you can address those two things that I just mentioned.
Mr. Mosley, the NAACP is saying that this was no step forward to them. Richard Rose said that, and that the real actual change will come with the complete removal and repudiation of the carving itself. I know that was not discussed today, but to appease, what's gonna happen with that carving? When will that conversation come up, and will that ever appease that group?
I'm sure the carving will come up. It has already came up. But where we go from there, I don't know. Where we go from there. And I think on what the CEO said, we want to tell the whole story. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, history is not good and pleasant to all of us, but it's history. It's history. It's history. Now, if the past is holding us back from going forward, then we need to do something.
Can you talk a little bit about how the process for selecting committee committee members for the exhibit will happen?
The advisory?
Yeah, the advisory committee, yeah, how will that work?
Well, we hadn't got to the kind of the beginning of it yet, how we're gonna do it, but we want to have the makeup of the community involved with those 7 that we select and telling the whole story. We're gonna have the makeup of the community. We haven't got there yet, but we will get there.
At the last minute, you guys talked about the exhibit including some history of the Ku Klux Klan here. Is that the plan? Can you elaborate on what that exhibit will contain?
Sure, it's going to contain the whole history of the carving itself. And, that carving was not done in 1861. 1865, after the war, it was done in the early beginning in the 1900s and wasn't finished until 1970. And if you go back and read Marvin Griffin's biography, the governor of Georgia, he was involved in this because he was making a point about segregation. So we're going to tell that story. We're also going to tell the story that in 1915 or thereabouts, there was a rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan and what that meant and what it means today and so forth. So that part of the history that will be told will be that.
Mr. Chairman, have you said that bothering the carving is just a bridge too far, that you support leaving it like it is?
I didn't say I agree leave it like it is. I don't know what will be the solution to the problem. We will address it at the proper time.
Can you talk about the moving of the flags, help our viewers and readers understand what's the thought process behind keeping the flags up and just moving them to a different location? Why not just keep them where they are?
Georgia law 50-3-1 says a flag is a monument, and monuments can't be moved unless you meet two criteria. One, that you're preserving and protecting it, and number two, that you're putting it in a place of similar prominence. So by law, we're limited on what we can and can't do with the flags. What we're doing is taking them off the most heavily traveled area of the park and putting them at the base of the mountain where if somebody wants to go see the Confederate flags in Ballard Park, they can go see them. They can have a picture made in a beautiful venue. But we're taking it off that trail, and we're limited by Georgia law in what we can do. We simply cannot, under Georgia law, simply take down the flags. You just can't, because of the way it's written.
That's helpful. I think some people might be confused as by the removing of them. And just following up on that, you say you can't remove anything. Mr. Rose with the Atlanta NAACP said you can't remove it, but the law doesn't say you have to maintain it. Just basically let it fall apart. Is that anything that's ever been discussed and considered by the board?
Talking about the carving.
The carving and I guess the flags as well.
Yeah. To remove the carving would take a small tactical nuclear weapon. It's 3 acres of solid granite. It's probably not going anywhere. That's why we're telling the story about it. As to what Georgia law says, I mean, there's an argument that we are required to maintain it. But frankly, I can tell you, we have spent very little in the last 4 or 5 years on that carpet. It doesn't need much maintenance. It's solid granite.
So
We
this-
inspect it once a year and look to see if there are any pieces that are gonna fall off and injure anybody. But the maintenance is not a huge expense on it.
State Representative Billy Mitchell told me it's $250,000 a year to maintain that carving. Is that not accurate?
Billy was in the House when I was in the Senate, and he's just not accurate with that. He's misreading, and it's not his fault. There are a lot of numbers and a lot of ways you can look at it. We don't spend, I don't think we even spend $25,000 a year doing it. So he's just a little bit wrong on that, and I respect him immensely. He just, I'll be glad to discuss it now.
Do you hope that these changes will help draw more people to the park, maybe that have been hesitant to come because of the connection with the Confederacy?
Well, we get over 3 million people now a year, 10 million Georgians. Of course, we hope that business will be better. How much the Confederacy impacts day-to-day attendance is debatable. I'll tell you what it does affect. It affects this hotel and the other hotels on the property. And because we don't get corporate business here because of the Confederacy issue that we used to get. So if those companies come back to this park, that's a positive in the revenue situation.
Do you think these changes are enough to change some of the economic situation, I guess, between, like you said, the hotel and person finding a replacement for them?
Well, I think these were necessary steps to be able to say to people who would do business with us that we want to tell the truth, tell the whole story. We're limited on what we can do and can't do, but we're going to take action where we can. And I hope it makes a difference.
Coca-Cola has been a longtime partner of the park. Do you have any comment on them removing their logo from your website?
That's a Hershey Family Entertainment question. That's not our website.
Their
That's
logo was removed from your website recently.
Pardon me?
The Coca-Cola logo was removed from StoneMountainPark.com.
Yes.
Do you have any comment on that?
Well, StoneMountainPark.com is not our website. The state authority is StoneMountainPark.org. You'd have to go to Hershey Family Entertainment. I think you'll find when you go to them that you'll find that Coke is still a sponsor of Stone Mountain Park. I don't know why, or I haven't looked at who's a sponsor on their website or who isn't.
You mentioned that economic decline, I guess, of corporate park. Is there a time when that began? Has it been going on for X amount of years?
Things began to change in 2015 with the shooting in Charleston. You all remember the bad shooting there. And things began to change. We began to get more attention for the Confederacy issue because of flags and other things. And so over a period of time, it began to be noticeable. But frankly, COVID has had such an impact, it's hard to tell what's COVID and what's the Confederacy. We do have two issues there that we have to deal with. They're pretty obvious.
With you saying 3 million visitors, is the attendance knocked down? Or is it?
Attendance, it's hard to tell because of COVID. Yes, attendance is really down, but what part of that is COVID and what part's the Confederacy, we don't know. But I can just tell you that the economic performance of this hotel and of other parts of things that we do, they're impacted, our corporate business have been impacted. Yeah.
Has there
Richard?
been any thought that the board may itself go to the legislature and ask for more power and authority to be able to institute changes that could help the economic impact of all this on the park?
We've not taken public positions on legislation. As you well know, that's a dangerous place to be sometimes. But I have said personally, just speaking as me as a former state senator, that it's not something that I personally would oppose. But it's up to the Georgia General Assembly and the governor to make those kinds of decisions. That's above my pay grade.
Did these all pass unanimously today, the four resolutions? That was unanimous, right? by the board?
I only saw one where I didn't see one hand.
I think there was one vote on one resolution where it was 7 out of 8.
7 and 8.
Because we didn't have, one of our board members had a appointment today, couldn't be here. So, one resolution, which I think was resolution number 1, had one person that abstained.
No opposition, just the abstaining.
Well, she didn't raise her hand one way or the other.
What did your own logo look like?
On in your kit.
Yeah,
It's the three, it's the cardinal.
still on the website.
It's the cardinal. Okay, anything else?
Well, you keep referring to the state law on monuments, but the state law didn't stop the city of Decatur from taking down their obelisk in the square. What's different about this situation?
What's different is the law says that if you're head of a state authority and you remove one of these things or do something wrong, you're guilty of a crime, and I'm not gonna do that.
Fair enough.
Real briefly, some of the other changes that were mentioned, street renamings
One
and
more.
whatnot. Any timeline for when those changes could be brought up for consideration?
No, sir, I don't know at this point.
But the advisory committee is gonna look at that, is that
They
correct?
they can if they wish.
Oh, if they wish.
All right, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.